Lucy first noticed something odd about the refrigerator on a balmy Saturday morning. Already running late for her volunteer shift at the local bookstore, she had hurried into the kitchen expecting to grab a simple bowl of cereal. To her surprise, when she yanked the fridge door open, a full plate of spaghetti carbonara teetered precariously on the edge of the top shelf. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and wondered if she was still half asleep. Unable to resist the aroma, she took a bite. It was unbelievably delicious. "The best pre-breakfast spaghetti I've ever had," she whispered, staring at the steaming dish in disbelief. Ordinarily, she might have assumed her roommate Oliver had made a fancy dinner the night before and left leftovers, but Oliver's idea of cooking involved microwaving pizza bagels. The entire situation screamed bizarre. However, Lucy didn't have time to investigate. She ate a couple forks worth of pasta, closed the fridge door, and dashed out. By the time she returned that evening, the mysterious carbonara had vanished entirely. In its place, upon opening the fridge, she found 2 pans of perfectly executed tiramisu, topped with velvety clouds of whipped mascarpone. "Oliver, are you pranking me?" she yelled, eyeing the dessert warily from across the kitchen. She expected him to come sauntering out, goofy grin in place, to take credit for her astonishment, but Oliver didn't show. Instead, Lucy grabbed a spoon, couldn't resist sampling the sugary masterpiece, and marveled at how impeccable it tasted, like an Italian patisserie had popped up on her fridge shelf. The evidence was too weird to ignore. First, a ready-to-eat pasta dish in the morning, and now top-tier tiramisu with no apparent explanation. The next day found Lucy determined. She was going to figure out why or how the fridge kept manifesting random gourmet cuisine. After rummaging through the kitchen drawers for a notepad, she decided to document every time she opened the fridge, what time it was, what she found inside, and whether anything else changed. She jotted down the times, the smells, the look of each dish, and whether she felt any strange sensations when standing near the fridge. The plan was borderline detective work, but Lucy had little shame in playing sleuth if it meant solving the puzzle. She half expected to catch Oliver with a secret chef's hat, trying out new recipes just to confuse her. Oliver came home later that afternoon in a flustered rush, carrying 2 grocery bags full of the same microwavable pizza bagels. He shot Lucy a confused glance. "Why all the note-taking? Did you lose a bet or something?" He plopped his bags down on the counter with a grunt. "Also, do we have any mustard? My bagels taste bland sometimes in the middle. Mustard might spice things up." "More on the mustard in a minute," Lucy said, ushering him to the refrigerator. "Open this. Tell me what you see." Oliver frowned but complied. The moment the fridge door swung wide, a fresh loaf of homemade sourdough bread greeted them. Perfectly crusty, lightly dusted with flour, it looked bakery perfect. Oliver's jaw dropped and he stared at Lucy as though she'd just performed a magic trick. She pointed to her notebook. "Precisely. I've seen spaghetti, tiramisu, and now fresh sourdough. We didn't buy this, right? And you definitely didn't bake bread with your track record in the kitchen, right?" Oliver shook his head. "Nope. I once confused yeast with cornstarch. Remember that mess? I certainly didn't produce this masterpiece." He poked the sourdough suspiciously, and it gave a springy bounce. "Are we sure we're not hosting some cosmic bakery in our kitchen?" Lucy laughed, a mix of relief and excitement shining in her eyes. "That's what it seems like. My best guess is that the fridge is somehow conjuring random dishes every time we open it. No one sneaks in, no special deliveries, it just appears." They tested the theory multiple times. After the sourdough, the fridge delivered spinach quiches, bowls of miso soup, triple-layer chocolate mousse, and even an elaborate sushi platter, complete with rolling mats that had seemingly manifested out of nowhere. Each time, Lucy and Oliver would gape at each other, devour the unexpected delights, and then race to Lucy's notepad. There they recorded each extraordinary occurrence, trying to trace a pattern. But if any pattern existed, it was so thoroughly random that it might as well have been an otherworldly slot machine disguised as a kitchen appliance. At first, the unending smorgasbord was exciting. Their weekly grocery bill shrank drastically. They never lacked for variety. Oliver boasted to his coworkers about the mystical wonders of his fridge. although no one believed him until he started snapping photos and sending them around. Lucy, meanwhile, investigated older stories of magical objects in local legends, scoured suspicious corners of the internet, and even asked the neighborhood's conspiracy theorist if he knew anything about possessed kitchenware. Of course, he didn't. But oh, he did try to sell her a tinfoil hat before she slammed her door shut. As days passed, a new problem arose. There was too much food. Somehow, the fridge didn't just conjure it produced massive portions. They ended up with enough stew to feed a small army, towers of crepes, entire roasted turkeys, and an 8-layer wedding-style cake without a wedding in sight. Their small apartment's kitchen table groaned under the sheer weight of dishes. The counters were jammed with bowls of leftovers they couldn't finish. Pots and pans they hadn't owned before appeared overnight, adding to the chaos. And on one unlucky morning, Lucy awoke to open the fridge for a glass of orange juice, only to find an entire passenger seat-sized watermelon stuffed between the crisper drawers. It fell out, narrowly missing her foot. "This can't go on," Oliver declared, rubbing his temples as he tiptoed around a massive soup cauldron that had mysteriously shown up near the sink. "Here's no space for us in the kitchen anymore. We need to figure out how to control this fridge or we'll drown in gourmet dinners." He and Lucy had taken to storing leftovers in huge Tupperware containers, distributing them among neighbors, or volunteering to cater the staff lounge at Oliver's workplace. One day, Lucy even left a giant peach cobbler on the curb with a hastily scribbled sign that read, "Free dessert, seriously, it's delicious," that only partially helped. Despite the exhaustion from dealing with endless dishes, Lucy remained scientific in her approach. She began analyzing the fridge's magical properties. Did it react to the day of the week, the time of day, or the emotional state of the person opening it? Did it produce more complicated dishes when it sensed eagerness, or simpler dishes when it sensed exhaustion? Oliver offered moral support and occasionally comedic suggestions, such as wearing sunglasses to fool the fridge into conjuring only small meals. That idea didn't work, though it did prompt the fridge to present a stack of blueberry pancakes the size of manhole covers. One evening, Lucy watched as Oliver opened the door even though he wasn't hungry. They discovered a family-sized paella bursting with shrimp, chicken, chorizo, saffron, expertly prepared with steam drifting upwards in ribbons of temptation. Lucy took notes. The difference was that Oliver felt no particular desire for food, yet the fridge had still produced one of the largest meals yet. "So it's not about how badly we want it," she mumbled, furiously jotting down observations. Oliver had already scooped a bowl of paella and was stuffing it into his mouth. "It's so good," he mumbled through saffron-infused grains of rice. "Magic tastes incredible." That same night, Lucy had an idea. Maybe the fridge wanted reciprocation. What if we place a dish inside the fridge as an offering? "Maybe it will slow down and understand we're not trying to exploit it," she said. Oliver scratched his chin. "We can try, but what do we give a magical fridge that conjures better food than we can ever make?" He had a valid point, but Lucy insisted on trying at least something. So they scrounged up the leftover pizza bagels from Oliver's grocery haul and arranged them neatly on a plate. They stuck the plate inside the refrigerator, shut the door, and recited a half-joking, "Fridge, please accept our humble offering." Then they waited. When they reopened the door an hour later, the bagels were gone. Instead, a layered Greek moussaka had taken their place. Lucy all but slumped onto the floor with a combination of laughter and exasperation. So, God of refrigeration deems pizza bagels inferior. Guess we need to try something else." The next morning, as Lucy stumbled into the kitchen in search of black coffee, she was greeted by an acrid smell. Something was burning. She yanked open the fridge door, and to her horror, a tiny smoking saucepan was perched right on the top shelf. Its contents looked like a charred hockey puck floating in molten grease. A noxious plume of smoke billowed out. In a panic, Lucy snatched the pan out of the fridge, tossed it into the sink, and turned on the faucet full blast. The water struck the hot, scorching black lump, erupting in steam. She coughed and sputtered, tears pricking at her eyes from the burn of the fumes. Oliver sprinted into the kitchen, hair sticking up in every direction, also coughing. "What did you do?" he croaked, eyes watering. "I didn't do anything," Lucy insisted. "The fridge conjured a disaster this time." After the smoke dissipated, they opened the fridge again, more cautiously. This time, the shelves were empty. No random platter of sweets, no hearty stew, just nothing. Even the leftover containers had vanished. Puzzled, Oliver gingerly placed a jug of milk inside, only for it to remain unaltered. "Maybe the fridge is angry at us for not properly appreciating its offerings," Lucy guessed. She felt a little foolish personifying a kitchen appliance so thoroughly, but at this point, reason seemed to have left the building a long time ago. Their quiet respite couldn't last. Later that afternoon, Lucy found a small sticky note stuck to the fridge door that hadn't been there earlier. The note was written in an elegant looping script, and it read, "Only those who appreciate the art of cuisine shall benefit. Gluttony leads to disappointment, but gratitude ensures bounty." Lucy nearly jumped out of her skin, calling Oliver over. He read it, mouth gaping, and promptly offered an unnecessary apology to the fridge. "We appreciate the art of cuisine, we do," he mumbled, as if speaking to a sentient, otherworldly presence. For a few days, all conjuring ceased. They didn't dare test the fridge more than necessary. In fact, they even started cooking their own meals again. Lucy roasted chicken while Oliver supervised from afar, fearful of messing up. They prepared salads, grilled cheeses, and an occasional attempt at pasta that definitely didn't match the magical marvel of the fridge's carbonara. But they tried to be mindful, used fresh ingredients, and took care with their utensils and cooking times. It was surprisingly peaceful, albeit mundane, to return to normal cooking. The fridge's next big surprise arrived on a Tuesday evening, exactly a week after Lucy had discovered the first suspicious dish. She was about to get some ice for her water when she hesitantly opened the fridge door. A solitary cupcake sat on the top shelf in an ornate cupcake wrapper vanilla cake, pastel frosting, decorated with a swirl that glimmered faintly under the kitchen lights. Fascinated, Lucy carefully reached in and lifted the cupcake. A small note was tucked beneath it, a sweet treat for those who remember that magic begins in the heart, not the stomach. Bewildered, Lucy showed Oliver, and together they shared the cupcake's unbelievably soft, lightly sweetened frosting. It was as though the fridge had left them a peace offering, or maybe an apology for the burnt fiasco. From that moment on, Lucy and Oliver began to see a pattern, or maybe a moral lesson. Whenever they treated their meals as special events, savoring every bite, the fridge would occasionally deliver something wonderful: a fancy risotto, an artisanal chocolate tart, or a heartfelt bowl of chicken noodle soup that reminded Lucy of her grandma's cooking. But if they got greedy or forgetful, piling their sink high with half-eaten leftovers, the fridge would either produce overcooked disasters or stop conjuring altogether. It was a bizarre, culinary-based code of ethics enforced by an inanimate object. Yet Lucy and Oliver adapted, ironically becoming more tidy and thankful than ever before. Things took a wild turn when Oliver, in a moment of comedic bravado, invited a few friends over to experience the magic for themselves. Eager to show off, he insisted that the fridge would wow them with a lavish spread. Lucy cautioned him, reminding him of the fridge's moodiness, but Oliver simply channeled his best showman grin. "Don't worry," he told Lucy with a wink. "I've got this under control. The fridge and I are on good terms." That self-assurance dried up quickly, however, the instant their guests arrived. Oliver swung open the fridge door with dramatic flair, only to reveal a giant bowl of watery oatmeal sloshing inside. "Well, that's anticlimactic," muttered one of his friends, while another politely took a spoonful and tried not to gag. Humiliated, Oliver told everyone it must be a weird glitch, so they decided to wait a bit. 20 minutes later, Oliver checked the fridge again. The oatmeal had vanished, replaced by a single, measly slice of stale bread. His friends snorted in laughter. Lucy stifled a sympathetic smile, hoping to salvage the situation. She retrieved some chips and salsa from the pantry, trying to make the gathering somewhat enjoyable. By the time the evening ended, Lucy's cautionary advice was proven right. The fridge refused to perform for an audience that just wanted a spectacle. Oliver sulked afterward, feeling as though the fridge had betrayed him in front of his friends. However, a new note appeared taped to the inside of the fridge that evening. True gratitude cannot be staged. Authentic appreciation fosters true delight. Realizing his mistake, Oliver apologized out loud, part joking, part serious. He vowed to keep the fridge's wonders between himself and Lucy, except in situations of genuine necessity or genuine joy. No more shallow demonstrations for the sake of bragging rights. From then on, Lucy and Oliver fell into a comfortable routine with their magical fridge. They'd cook most of their meals themselves, but once in a while, if someone had a hard day or felt sick or just needed a pick-me-up, they'd open the fridge and discover a heartfelt meal or treat. It was as though the fridge had become an actual member of their household, one with opinions, feelings, and a flair for drama. They made fewer attempts to analyze it scientifically and more efforts to celebrate the simple pleasure of good food. In turn, the refrigerator rewarded them with creative dishes that complemented their moods perfectly. A lonely Tuesday night might yield savory chili, a day of triumph, a promotion at Lucy's part-time job, or Oliver finally finishing his side project produced elaborate chocolate ganache torts that made them dance with joy. Gradually, word spread among their close friends that Lucy and Oliver had a special fridge. One friend with a broken heart wandered into their apartment, depressed because his longtime partner had left him. Opening the fridge to grab a soda, he discovered a perfectly shaped heart-shaped pizza, loaded with all his favorite toppings. Another friend who had been ill found a vat of healing chicken soup waiting for her inside that magical door. The fridge noticed sincerity, kindness, and vulnerability, offering something special when people truly needed it. But superficial requests for extravagance, hollow attempts at gluttony, recalled only in bland or even burned outcomes. Of course, comedic mishaps still happened. One morning, Lucy forgot to do the dishes for 2 days in a row, letting half-eaten conjured meals stack up in the sink. A swift revenge came in the form of an overflowing pot of vegetable soup that poured from the fridge the moment she opened it. She shrieked as steaming broth and carrot chunks cascaded onto her feet, and Oliver hurried over with towels. While swearing never again to neglect cleanup, Lucy couldn't help but appreciate the comedic timing. Their kitchen became a place of both reverence and camaraderie, especially once they realized that cooking their own meals alongside whatever the fridge conjured turned into a fun dance of creation. Lucy experimented with homemade sauces, Oliver began polishing his limited cooking skills under Lucy's patient guidance, and together they found ways to pair the fridge's random gastronomic gifts with their own culinary attempts. Sometimes the results were hilarious. One day, the fridge offered a delicate white wine sauce with seared halibut, while Oliver had prepared hot dogs with too much mustard. They ended up combining them in a questionable surf and turf fiasco that surprisingly still tasted good. Over time, Lucy observed that the fridge's spells seemed to align not just with their appreciation, but with the broader energy in the kitchen itself. Whenever she and Oliver laughed together, the fridge contributed a dish that complemented the shared moment, a classy cheese fondue or a whimsical dessert shaped like smiling faces. When arguments or tensions rose, the fridge either produced lifeless or incomplete dishes or simply refused to conjure anything at all. In a strange, comedic twist, the fridge was an emotional barometer for their household's harmony. As their journey with the fridge continued, Lucy began to see it not only as a mysterious phenomenon, but as an ongoing lesson in gratitude, balance, and comedic humility. She remembered the early days fondly, the surreal thrill of seeing that first plate of spaghetti carbonara, but she also cringed at how quickly the novelty had spiraled out of control, burying them in mountains of unwanted leftovers until they realized they needed to slow down, be more purposeful, and treat each meal as a small miracle. She sometimes joked that they should open a restaurant called Fridge of Wonders, but Oliver reminded her that the fridge didn't like performing for money or spectacle, only for genuine enjoyment. Eventually, Lucy and Oliver decided to move to a larger place, a small house with a pleasant yard where they dreamed of planting an herb garden. Their old apartment had become cramped, and the landlord repeatedly complained about the mysterious cooking odors and the pile of Tupperware that occasionally spilled into the hallway. The question hung in the air. Would the fridge's magic follow them or stay rooted in that particular kitchen? They fretted over it, uncertain of the cause of its enchantment. On moving day, they carefully transported the fridge with them. As they carried it down the apartment stairs, the fridge rattled ominously, but they reminded it somewhat jokingly to behave. Once installed in their new kitchen, Lucy and Oliver exchanged an almost nervous glance. Then, crossing their fingers, they opened the door. Empty, of course, except for the groceries they had placed inside. Lucy nodded, her heart sinking just a tad. Maybe the fridge's magic had dissipated. But that evening, after a long day of unpacking, Lucy found a solitary box of homemade fortune cookies inside the fridge, each containing a playful note that read, "Home is where good food and good hearts meet. Welcome to your next chapter." She called Oliver over, brimming with excitement. They cracked open a cookie, read the message, and smiled. The fridge's magic had indeed followed them. All the gratitude, care, and comedic mischief remained in those frosty shelves. Life continued in that new house. Over time, Lucy and Oliver realized that while they'd never fully understand how or why their refrigerator conjured random dishes, they no longer needed to. It was enough to know that as long as they kept perspective, balancing their desire for novelty with respect, cleaning up promptly, and sharing the fridge's gifts with people who truly needed them, they could maintain harmony with their ever-surprising appliance. Sometimes, they still got bizarre lumps of burning goo or were chided for being careless, but more often, they discovered new delights that made them laugh and be grateful. Their kitchen chaos was no longer a source of frustration, it was a reminder of the wondrous ways in which everyday objects could become extraordinary. Indeed, the fridge embodied the idea that even mundane corners of life could hide a dash of magic as long as one approached them with the right blend of humility, humor, and thankfulness. And each time Lucy tossed open the fridge door, unsure whether she'd find leftover salad or a grand feast, she felt a surge of anticipation and excitement. Because in a world full of the predictable, a reliable little spark of chaos in the form of a magical refrigerator was something to treasure.